The invitation arrived on a Tuesday, delivered by a floating crystal that spoke in 17 different languages simultaneously. Dr. Amy Rodriguez nearly dropped her coffee when the thing materialized in her laboratory at the Earth Defense Headquarters. She had been studying samples of alien plant life when the crystal began its announcement. The Galactic Federation cordially invites humanity to participate in the Grand Arena Championships. Please select your finest warriors for combat trials that will determine your species' military ranking and trade privileges. Amy stared at the crystal for a full minute before calling Captain Neil Brooks. Neil was the kind of man who took everything in stride, but even he seemed rattled when Amy explained what had just happened. Within an hour, they were both sitting in a conference room with Ambassador Roth, a tall gray creature with too many eyes and a voice like grinding metal. Your species has been granted a rare opportunity, Ambassador Roth explained, his multiple eyes blinking in sequence. Most new Federation members must wait decades before arena participation. However, the High Council believes humans show potential. Neil leaned forward in his chair. What exactly are these combat trials? Each species sends their most formidable representatives to compete in various challenges. Combat, survival, problem-solving, escape scenarios. The results determine your species' position in the Federation hierarchy. Amy pulled up her tablet and began taking notes. What do other species typically send? The Drakmarians send their armored war beasts. The Crystalline Collective deploys their energy warriors. The insectoid hives utilize their soldier drones. Most species choose their apex predators or their most advanced military units. Neil and Amy exchanged glances. Earth had plenty of dangerous animals and highly trained soldiers, but something about the way Ambassador Roth spoke suggested this was more than just a simple competition. There must be rules, Amy said. Naturally. No technological enhancements beyond what occurs naturally in your species. No weapons. No outside assistance once the trials begin. The creatures must rely solely on their natural abilities. Creatures? Neil asked, did I not mention? The arena requires non-sentient representatives. Your animals, essentially. The reasoning is that sentient beings might hold back or negotiate during trials. Animals fight with pure instinct and ability. Amy's mind started racing. Earth had tigers that could take down prey twice their size, bears that could tear through steel, sharks that had survived millions of years of evolution. But as she thought about it, something else came to mind. Something much smaller but infinitely more stubborn. How long do we have to decide? Neil asked. 1 standard galactic week. Choose wisely. Your species' future standing depends on this performance. After Ambassador Roth left, Amy and Neil sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Neil spoke. So, what are you thinking? Tigers? Bears? Maybe we could get some military working dogs. Amy was scrolling through files on her tablet, her expression growing more excited by the minute. I have a different idea. Something that might surprise them. What is it? Have you ever heard of a honey badger? Neil frowned. Badger? Like those things that dig holes? Not quite. Amy turned her tablet toward him, showing a video of a small black and white creature. Watch this. The video showed a honey badger breaking out of what appeared to be an escape-proof enclosure. It climbed walls, dug under barriers, and somehow managed to unlock a gate that should have been impossible for an animal to open. Okay. That's impressive, but it's tiny, Neil said. Amy swiped to another video. This one showed a honey badger fighting off 3 lions, refusing to back down despite being outnumbered and outweighed by hundreds of pounds. They're called the most fearless animals on Earth, Amy explained. They fight snakes, break into beehives for fun, and have been known to attack vehicles. Their skin is so loose that if a predator grabs them, they can turn around and attack while still being held. Neil watched another video of a honey badger casually walking through a pack of wild dogs, completely ignoring their attempts to intimidate it. You want to send these to represent humanity in galactic combat trials? Think about it, Amy said, her excitement growing. Every other species is going to send their biggest, strongest, most obvious choice. They're expecting us to do the same. But what if we send something that doesn't follow the rules? What do you mean? Honey badgers don't understand the concept of impossible. They don't care if something is bigger than them. They don't accept that barriers can't be broken or that fights can't be won. They just persist. Neil looked skeptical. The other species are going to laugh at us. Maybe. But they'll stop laughing when they see what these animals can do. Amy pulled up more files, showing honey badgers escaping from zoos, breaking into research facilities, and generally causing chaos wherever they went. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a report. "A zoo tried to keep a honey badger contained for 3 years. The animal escaped 47 times. They reinforced the walls, added electric fencing, dug the barriers deeper. Nothing worked. The badger just kept finding new ways out. And you think this will impress aliens?" "I think this will break their system," Amy said quietly. "The arena is designed around predictable behavior. Big creatures fight with strength. Fast creatures fight with speed. Smart creatures use strategy. But honey badgers do all of that and more. They improvise. They refuse to lose. They turn every situation into chaos." Neil was quiet for a long moment, watching a video of a honey badger methodically dismantling a supposedly indestructible toy in a matter of minutes. "How many would we need?" "The rules allow up to 5 representatives per species," Amy said. "I know exactly where to get them, and I know someone who can handle them." "This is insane." "Exactly," Amy grinned. "When has humanity ever chosen the sane option?" 2 days later, Amy found herself on a video call with Dr. Lisa Wang, one of the world's leading experts on honey badger behavior. Lisa was initially skeptical, then intrigued, and finally excited about the possibility. "If you're serious about this," Lisa said, "I know the perfect candidates, and I know someone who can work with them safely." "Who?" "Ranger Pete Collins. He's been working with honey badgers for 20 years. If anyone can prepare them for something like this, it's Pete." Amy looked at Neil, who shrugged. "Why not? We're already committed to the crazy plan." As they finalized the arrangements, Amy couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to unleash something the galaxy wasn't prepared for. The Federation expected Earth to send tigers or bears. Instead, they were sending 5 small black and white animals that had never met a problem they couldn't solve or a barrier they couldn't break. "I just hope we know what we're doing," Neil muttered. Amy smiled as she watched another video of a honey badger casually stealing food from a leopard 3 times its size. "We're about to find out." The Federation Council chamber buzzed with confusion as Dr. Amy Rodriguez finished her presentation. Holographic displays showed Earth creatures of all kinds: massive elephants, powerful sharks, deadly snakes. But the humans had requested to enter something called Mellivora capensis into the arena trials. High Arbiter Quinn, an ancient being of pure energy who had overseen the arena for thousands of years, flickered with curiosity. Around the circular chamber, representatives from dozens of species murmured among themselves in languages that ranged from melodic songs to harsh clicking sounds. "Let me understand this correctly," rumbled General Voss of the Drakmarian Empire, his voice like grinding stone. "You wish to enter these honey badgers against our war beasts?" Amy nodded confidently. "That's exactly what we're proposing." A series of chittering sounds came from the insectoid delegation as they communicated among themselves. Their speaker, a creature resembling a massive praying mantis, stepped forward. "We have analyzed your data. These creatures weigh approximately 8 to 12 kilograms. Our soldier drones weigh over 200 kilograms and possess natural armor plating." "Size isn't everything," Amy replied, activating another holographic display. The video showed a honey badger facing down a cobra, one of Earth's deadliest snakes. Instead of backing away, the badger attacked, seemingly immune to the snake's venom. "Impressive resistance to toxins," acknowledged the representative from the Venomous Sisterhood, a species that relied heavily on chemical warfare. "But our creatures produce acids that can dissolve metal." Amy smiled and switched to another video. This one showed a honey badger breaking into a research facility by somehow figuring out how to open multiple types of locks, including electronic ones. "Intelligence is admirable," stated the Crystalline Collective's spokesman, his crystal body chiming as he spoke. "However, our energy warriors operate on pure logic and cannot be confused or misdirected." "Watch this," Amy said, showing footage of a honey badger in a maze designed for much larger animals. Instead of following the intended path, the badger simply climbed over the walls, dug under barriers, and in one case, somehow convinced the maze's automatic door system to malfunction by repeatedly triggering the sensors. The chamber fell quiet for a moment. Ambassador Roth, who had been silently observing, finally spoke. "Dr. Rodriguez, with respect to your species, these creatures appear to be small. The arena has hosted battles between creatures the size of your Earth buildings. How do you expect these badgers to survive, let alone compete?" Amy had been waiting for this question. She activated a new display showing a honey badger's anatomy. Honey badgers have evolved some unique characteristics. Their skin is extremely loose, which means if a predator grabs them, they can literally turn around inside their own skin and attack back. They're also incredibly resistant to injury and have one of the strongest bite forces relative to their size of any animal on Earth. Still, interrupted the Drakmarian general, strength is measured in absolute terms, not relative ones. Is it? Amy asked. She switched to a video that made several council members recoil. It showed a honey badger attacking a buffalo 50 times its size, climbing onto the massive animal's back and refusing to let go despite being thrown around violently. The honey badger won, Amy explained as the buffalo eventually fled, not through superior strength but through superior stubbornness. High Arbiter Quinn pulsed with what might have been amusement. Stubbornness is not typically considered a combat advantage. On Earth, we have a saying about honey badgers, Amy said. Honey badger don't care. They literally don't care about odds, size differences, or conventional tactics. They approach every situation as if they've already won, and they keep fighting until reality agrees with them. The ethereal representative, a being of shifting mist and starlight, spoke in a voice like wind through crystal caves. This appears to be more about psychological warfare than physical combat. Maybe, Amy admitted. But watch this. The new video showed a honey badger that had been captured and placed in what researchers called an escape-proof enclosure. Over the course of several hours, the badger systematically tested every inch of its prison, eventually finding a tiny weakness in the construction and exploiting it to break free. They don't just fight, Amy explained. They problem solve. They innovate. They refuse to accept that anything is impossible. Your proposal is highly irregular, stated the council's legal advisor, a being that looked like a floating brain in a jar. Traditionally, species send their apex predators or engineered warforms. Honey badgers are apex predators, Amy said. They're just not apex in the way you might expect. General Voss laughed, a sound like rocks falling down a mountain. These tiny creatures are apex predators? On what world? On any world they happen to be on, Amy replied seriously. That's the point. They don't care about the environment or the odds. They adapt faster than anything can kill them. The chamber erupted in discussion as different species debated among themselves. Some found the human proposal amusing. Others considered it insulting, and a few seemed genuinely intrigued. High Arbiter Quinn raised a tendril of energy, and the chamber fell silent. The arena has very specific rules about entry qualifications, the Arbiter said. The creature must be naturally occurring from the representative species' homeworld. No genetic modifications, no technological enhancements, no artificial training beyond basic behavioral conditioning. Honey badgers meet all those requirements, Amy confirmed. The creature must also demonstrate measurable combat capability, survival instincts, and problem-solving abilities. I believe our presentation has shown all three. Indeed. The Arbiter paused, energy swirling in patterns that suggested deep thought. However, there is one additional requirement that has never been invoked before. Amy felt her heart sink. What requirement? The creature must not pose a threat to the arena infrastructure itself. I don't understand. The Arbiter's energy patterns shifted to something that might have been concern. The arena is a carefully controlled environment. Every scenario, every challenge, every possible variable has been calculated and prepared for. We cannot allow entry of any creature that might compromise these preparations. Amy looked at the videos still playing on the holographic displays, honey badgers breaking out of enclosures, dismantling equipment, finding solutions that their creators never intended. Are you saying honey badgers are too unpredictable for the arena? I am saying, the Arbiter replied carefully, that your creatures appear to have a tendency to treat every environment as a puzzle to be solved, rather than a challenge to be faced within established parameters. So what do we need to do to prove they're suitable? The chamber buzzed with renewed discussion. Finally, High Arbiter Quinn made a decision that would change everything. We will conduct a preliminary trial. A single honey badger will be placed in one of our standard arena environments under controlled conditions. If it performs within acceptable parameters, we will approve your full entry. Amy felt both excitement and worry. She had studied honey badgers long enough to know that they didn't really do controlled conditions. When would this trial take place? Immediately. Do you have a specimen available? Amy thought about Pete Collins and the 5 honey badgers he was currently working with back on Earth. We can have one here within 3 days. Excellent. This preliminary trial will be conducted before the full council. I trust your creature will provide an educational experience. As the session ended and the various representatives began filing out, Amy noticed that General Voss approached her. Human, he said, his stone-like face showing what might have been respect. Your species continues to surprise us. Whether this is wisdom or madness remains to be seen. With honey badgers, Amy replied, it's usually both. As she left the chamber, Amy sent a message to Earth. Bring Houdini. We're going to need our best escape artist for this one. She had no idea she had just set in motion events that would lead to the most chaotic incident in arena history. Ranger Pete Collins stood in the cargo bay of the human transport ship, watching 5 custom-built containment units being loaded onto hover platforms. Each unit held 1 honey badger, and Pete could already hear the scratching sounds that meant his charges were testing their temporary homes for weaknesses. These containers won't hold them forever, he warned Dr. Lisa Wang, who was double-checking the environmental controls on each unit. They only need to hold them until we reach the arena, Lisa replied, making notes on her tablet. Though I notice Houdini has already figured out how to manipulate the food dispenser to give him extra portions. Pete grinned. Houdini was indeed the escape artist of the group, a lean male honey badger who seemed to view every barrier as a personal challenge. The other 4 were equally impressive in their own ways. Bandit was the strategist, always observing before acting. Fury was pure aggression wrapped in a small package. Tank was the most physically robust, built like a furry bowling ball. And Chaos lived up to her name by finding creative ways to turn any situation upside down. Dr. Rodriguez wants to run through the arena specifications one more time before we arrive, Lisa said. Pete nodded and followed her to the ship's briefing room, where Amy was studying holographic displays of the arena's various challenge environments. The preliminary trial will use Environment 7, Amy explained. It's a basic survival scenario with some puzzle elements. The honey badger will be placed in a contained ecosystem with limited food sources, natural barriers, and what they call environmental challenges. What kind of challenges? Pete asked. According to the technical specifications, there will be automated systems that create obstacles. Moving walls, changing floor levels, water hazards, that sort of thing. The creature is supposed to navigate through the environment and reach a designated safe zone within a specified time limit. Pete studied the layout. It looked like a complex maze with multiple levels and various mechanical components. How long do they usually give creatures to complete this? The current record is held by a crystalline warrior that finished in 43 minutes. Most creatures take between 2 to 4 hours. Some never finish at all. And if Houdini doesn't finish? Amy's expression grew serious. Then humanity gets classified as unsuitable for arena participation, and we lose significant standing in the Federation. Pete looked at the holographic maze again, then smiled. You realize they're basically asking a honey badger to break out of a fancy cage, right? That's the idea. Then Houdini will have this figured out in 10 minutes. When their ship docked at the massive arena station, Pete was struck by the sheer scale of the place. The station was larger than most Earth cities, and the central arena complex could have housed a dozen football stadiums. Beings from across the galaxy moved through the corridors, and Pete noticed many of them staring at the human delegation with curiosity. The preliminary trial was being held in a smaller arena chamber, but it was still impressive. Tiered seating surrounded a large transparent dome that contained Environment 7. Pete watched as automated systems finished setting up the course, creating a landscape that looked like a cross between a natural habitat and a mechanical puzzle. High Arbiter Quinn materialized near the human observation area, his energy form shifting between different colors as he spoke. The trial will begin shortly. Your creature will be released at the starting point and must reach the designated safe zone. Time limit is 6 hours. Are you prepared? Pete looked at Houdini's transport container, where the honey badger was calmly grooming himself as if he were about to take a nap, rather than represent his entire species. We're ready. As the honey badger was released into the environment, Pete noticed the sudden silence that fell over the observation area. Representatives from dozens of species leaned forward to watch the small black and white creature that had caused so much debate. Houdini emerged from the starting chamber and immediately began what Pete recognized as his standard assessment routine. Instead of heading toward the obvious path, the honey badger started methodically examining his surroundings, sniffing at walls, testing surfaces with his claws, and paying particular attention to anything that made mechanical sounds. "What is it doing?" asked General Voss of the Drakmarians. "The path is clearly marked." "He's learning the rules," Pete explained. Honey badgers always figure out how something works before they decide whether to follow the intended solution. Houdini approached the first major obstacle, a wall that was supposed to be climbed using a series of handholds. Instead, the honey badger walked around the base of the wall until he found where the mechanical lifting mechanism was anchored. He began digging. "Is that allowed?" asked the insectoid representative. "There's nothing in the rules that says the creature must use the intended path," High Arbiter Quinn replied, though Pete detected what might have been amusement in the Arbiter's energy patterns. Within minutes, Houdini had excavated enough of the mechanism's foundation to cause the entire wall section to become unstable. Instead of climbing over the wall, he simply pushed it over and walked across it. A murmur of surprise rippled through the observation area. The next challenge was a water hazard with floating platforms that creatures were supposed to jump between. Houdini studied the setup for about 30 seconds, then walked to the edge of the arena and began following the water channel to its source. He quickly discovered that the entire water system was controlled by a pump mechanism accessible through a maintenance grate. "He's not supposed to be able to access maintenance areas," one of the arena technicians said, nervously. "How is he supposed to know that?" Amy asked innocently. Houdini managed to wedge the grate open and disappeared into the maintenance tunnel. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the water level in the hazard began dropping rapidly. "He's turned off the pump," the technician reported with growing alarm. "Is that a problem?" Pete asked. Before anyone could answer, Houdini emerged from a different maintenance access point, now on the far side of the water hazard. He had completely bypassed the jumping challenge by taking control of the water system. "This is highly irregular," stated the legal advisor, "but technically not against the rules," High Arbiter Quinn observed. The final challenge was the most complex. A three-dimensional maze with moving walls, shifting floors, and multiple dead ends. Most creatures spent hours learning the pattern and finding the correct route. Houdini looked at the maze entrance for approximately 10 seconds, then began climbing the outside wall of the entire structure. "He can't do that," protested one of the observers. "Why not?" Amy asked. "Because the maze is supposed to be solved from the inside." "But he's still reaching the safe zone," Pete pointed out. "That was the objective, right?" Houdini reached the top of the maze structure and began walking across the support beams toward the safe zone, completely ignoring the complex puzzle below him. However, his weight on the structural supports was triggering sensors throughout the maze, causing walls to move randomly and floors to shift in patterns the system had never been designed to handle. "The maze programming is becoming unstable," reported a technician. "The creature's approach is creating cascade errors in the navigation system." "Shut it down," ordered High Arbiter. "Quinn, I can't. The system is designed to only stop when a creature reaches the safe zone or the time limit expires." Houdini, meanwhile, had reached the safe zone in what Pete estimated was probably a record time. However, his unconventional route had left the maze in complete chaos, with walls moving randomly and the entire structure making alarming grinding sounds. "Trial completed," announced the arena computer. "Time 11 minutes 37 seconds. New record established." The observation area fell, silent except for the continued mechanical groaning from the damaged maze structure. High Arbiter Quinn's energy form flickered through several colors before settling on what Pete hoped was a pleased shade of blue. "Well," the Arbiter said finally, "that was educational." General Voss turned to Pete with an expression that might have been respect or horror. "Does your creature always solve problems by breaking the system that contains them?" Pete looked down at Houdini, who was now calmly grooming himself in the safe zone while automated repair systems tried to fix the maze around him. "Actually," Pete said, "that was pretty standard for him. You should see what he does when he's really motivated." Amy noticed that several Federation representatives were having urgent whispered conversations among themselves. She had a feeling that humanity had just passed their preliminary trial, but possibly in a way that was going to cause new problems. As they prepared to leave the arena, Pete caught Houdini's attention and held up a treat. The honey badger looked at him with what Pete swore was a satisfied expression, as if to say that was fun. What's next? The main arena championships began 3 days after Houdini's record-breaking preliminary trial. Pete Collins found himself in the competitor preparation area, watching as beings from across the galaxy readied their most fearsome representatives for combat. The humans looked distinctly out of place among the massive war beasts and armored creatures that filled the staging chambers. Dr. Lisa Wong was making final adjustments to the environmental suits that would allow the honey badgers to survive in the arena's various artificial atmospheres. The suits were minimal, just breathing apparatus and basic protection, since the rules required creatures to rely primarily on their natural abilities. Remember, Amy said as she reviewed the competition schedule, they're going to be separated into different trials initially. Each honey badger will face a unique challenge designed to test different combat capabilities. Pete nodded, watching his 5 charges. Bandit was methodically examining his containment unit, already planning his escape. Houdini appeared to be asleep, but Pete knew better. The honey badger was listening to every sound in the facility, learning the patterns. Fury was pacing restlessly, eager for action. Tank was doing what looked like honey badger calisthenics, and Chaos was somehow managing to rearrange her bedding into increasingly complex patterns. Trial assignments have been posted, announced an arena official, a tall being with crystalline features. Human representatives will participate in Combat Trial 7, Survival Challenge 4, Intelligence Assessment 2, Escape Protocol 9, and Environmental Adaptation Test 3. Simultaneous trials? Amy asked. Standard procedure. This allows us to evaluate all aspects of a species' capabilities at once. Pete felt a knot forming in his stomach. The honey badgers had never been separated during training. They seemed to have some kind of pack intelligence that allowed them to coordinate even when they couldn't see each other. What happens if they don't stay in their assigned areas? Pete asked. The official looked confused. I don't understand the question. He means, Lisa explained, what if they leave their trial zones and start exploring other parts of the arena? That would be impossible. Each trial environment is completely contained and escape-proof. Pete and Amy exchanged glances. Neither of them had the heart to explain that escape-proof was basically a personal challenge to a honey badger. The trials began with great ceremony. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the massive arena complex, and holographic displays showed multiple trial environments simultaneously. Pete watched from the human observation area as his 5 honey badgers were released into their respective challenges. Bandit found himself in Combat Trial 7, facing off against a Drakmarian war beast that looked like a cross between a tank and a very angry rhinoceros. The creature was 3 meters tall, covered in natural armor plating, and had been bred for generations specifically for arena combat. Instead of charging directly at his opponent like previous challengers had done, Bandit sat down and watched the war beast carefully. This was apparently not what the creature expected, because it stopped its aggressive display and tilted its massive head in confusion. What is the Earth creature doing? General Voss asked. Learning, Pete replied. Bandit always studies his opponent first. The war beast, tired of waiting, charged. At the last possible second, Bandit dodged to the side and did something that made the entire observation area gasp. He grabbed onto the creature's armored hide and scrambled up onto its back. No creature has ever attempted to ride a Drakmarian war beast. General Voss muttered, "How's that working out for them?" Pete asked, watching as Bandit began systematically testing different spots on the creature's armor, looking for weak points. Meanwhile, in Survival Challenge 4, Tank was supposed to be foraging for food in a hostile environment, filled with toxic plants and dangerous terrain. Instead, he had discovered that several of the dangerous plants were actually quite edible to a creature, with a honey badger's resistance to toxins. Rather than carefully avoiding hazards, Tank was treating the entire challenge like an all-you-can-eat buffet. Is he supposed to be consuming the poisonous vegetation? Asked the Venomous Sisterhood representative. Honey badgers eat pretty much anything, Lisa explained. They've evolved resistance to most natural toxins. Tank had also discovered that his claws were perfect for excavating the arena's artificial soil to reach water sources. Instead of using the limited water supplies provided for the trial, he was creating his own wells. In Intelligence Assessment 2, Fury was faced with a complex puzzle that required manipulating colored crystals to open a series of locked chambers. Previous challengers had spent hours learning the correct sequence. Fury took one look at the crystals, decided they were obstacles rather than tools, and began systematically destroying them with her claws and teeth. "She's ruining the puzzle," protested the crystalline collective representative. "She's solving it," Amy pointed out. "Look." Fury's approach of simply demolishing the crystal barriers was indeed opening the locked chambers, just not in the way the puzzle was designed to work. The arena's computer system seemed confused about whether to count this as success or failure. The real chaos began when Houdini, who was supposed to be contained in Escape Protocol 9, managed to break out of his trial environment in under 5 minutes. The Escape Protocol was considered one of the arena's most challenging trials. With most creatures taking hours to find the single correct exit route, Houdini found 17 different ways out. "Alert," announced the arena's automated systems. "Containment breach in Escape Protocol 9. "What does that mean?" Amy asked. "It means," said High Arbiter Quinn, his energy form flickering with what Pete was learning to recognize as concern, "that your creature has left his assigned trial area and is now somewhere in the arena infrastructure." "Is that bad?" Before anyone could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. "Additional alert," the computer announced. "Unauthorized access detected in Maintenance Level 7. Pete looked at the arena schematic display and realized that Maintenance Level 7 contained the central control systems for all the trial environments. "Oh no," Lisa whispered. "Houdini, what are you doing?" Pete muttered. As if in answer to his question, the holographic displays began showing some very unusual activity. In Combat Trial 7, Bandit was still riding the war beast, but now the trial environment's artificial gravity was fluctuating randomly. In Survival Challenge 4, Tank's food and water sources had suddenly tripled. In Intelligence Assessment 2, Fury's puzzle chambers were opening and closing in rapid sequence. "The control systems are malfunctioning," reported a technician. "No," Amy said, studying the patterns. "They're being controlled. Houdini has figured out how to manipulate the arena's computer systems." "That's impossible," stated the arena administrator. "Those systems require specialized knowledge and authorized access codes." "You might want to tell Houdini that," Pete said. The situation escalated rapidly when Chaos, who had been progressing normally through Environmental Adaptation Test 3, suddenly found her test environment merging with Combat Trial 7. The barriers between trial areas were dissolving, and creatures from different challenges were beginning to encounter each other. "System failure," announced the computer. "Trial integrity compromised. How is this happening?" demanded General Voss. Pete was beginning to understand. "They're coordinating." Houdini broke out and gained access to the control systems. Now he's modifying the other trials to help his packmates. Packmates? Honey badgers are more social than most people realize. These 5 have been working together for months. On the displays, they could see the results of this coordination. Bandit had somehow convinced the confused war beast to help him reach higher levels of the combat arena. Tank was using his enhanced food sources to build what looked like a fort. Fury had abandoned her puzzle entirely and was heading toward Combat Trial 7, apparently following scent trails that shouldn't have existed in the sterile arena environment. "How is she tracking through sealed environments?" asked the insectoid representative. "Houdini's been modifying the air circulation systems," Amy realized. "He's creating scent trails between the trial areas." Chaos, meanwhile, had encountered a group of creatures from other species' trials who had become confused by the rapidly changing environments. Instead of fighting them, she seemed to be teaching them honey badger problem-solving techniques. "Alert," the computer announced. "Multiple unauthorized creatures detected in restricted areas." Pete watched in amazement as creatures that had been struggling with their individual trials began working together, following strategies that were unmistakably honey badger in origin. A crystalline warrior was now using Tank's excavation techniques. A venomous sisterhood serpent had learned bandits ride the opponent's strategy. "They're starting a revolution," Lisa said in wonder. "This is unprecedented," High Arbiter Quinn stated. "Arena trials are individual competitions. Cooperation between species is not part of the protocol." "Maybe it should be," Amy suggested. The arena's automated containment systems activated, trying to restore order, but it was too late. Houdini had apparently been busy during his exploration of the maintenance areas. Barriers that were supposed to be impenetrable began opening. Emergency protocols designed to separate dangerous creatures were being overridden. All trials suspended, announced the computer, initiating emergency lockdown. But even the lockdown systems had been compromised. Instead of containing the chaos, the arena's own security measures were now being used to facilitate the growing interspecies cooperation that the honey badgers had somehow inspired. Pete looked around the observation area at the representatives from dozens of galactic civilizations, all staring in shock at the displays showing their carefully controlled competition dissolving into organized pandemonium. "So," he said cheerfully, "anyone want to discuss surrender terms?" Emergency klaxons wailed throughout the arena station as High Arbiter Quinn convened an emergency session of the Federation Council. The massive chamber buzzed with urgent conversations in dozens of languages, while holographic displays showed the continuing chaos in the arena complex below. Dr. Amy Rodriguez sat in the human delegation area, trying to look calm while watching her species representatives systematically dismantle thousands of years of carefully maintained arena protocols. On the main display, Houdini could be seen moving through what appeared to be the station's central computer core, somehow having gained access to areas that required multiple levels of security clearance. "Status report," demanded High Arbiter Quinn, his energy form pulsing with agitated colors. Arena Administrator Kane, a nervous being with too many eyes and a tendency to speak in rapid bursts, approached the central podium. "The situation continues to deteriorate. The human creatures have somehow achieved complete system access. They're not destroying anything, but they're reorganizing everything." "What do you mean by reorganizing?" asked General Voss. "They've linked all the trial environments together. Creatures from different species are now working in teams. The competitive structure has been completely abandoned in favor of what appears to be cooperative problem-solving." Ambassador Roth turned to Amy with an expression that might have been accusation. "Did you train your creatures to do this?" "We couldn't have trained them to do this," Amy replied honestly. "We had no idea the arena's systems were interconnected like this. They figured it out on their own." "In less than 2 hours," Kane added helpfully. "What took our engineers decades to design, they've completely reconfigured in less than 2 hours." On the displays, they could see the results of this reconfiguration. Tank had somehow convinced a group of crystalline warriors to help him build an elaborate tunnel system that connected multiple trial areas. Bandit was leading a mixed group of creatures through what had been individual combat trials, turning them into team exercises. Fury had organized several previously hostile species into an efficient hunting pack. "Where is Chaos?" Pete Collins asked, studying the displays. Kane checked his instruments nervously. "We've lost track of that particular creature. She was last detected in the food processing areas." "The food processing areas?" Amy asked. "Why would she go there?" Her question was answered when the station's intercom system crackled to life, broadcasting sounds that were unmistakably those of dozens of different species eating enthusiastically. "She's figured out how to access the food storage systems," Kane reported. "And she's sharing. Sharing how?" "She's opened the emergency food reserves and is distributing them to every creature in the arena complex. The rationing protocols have been completely bypassed." Pete couldn't help but smile. Honey badgers believe in taking care of their pack. Apparently, she's decided everyone here is part of her pack now. High Arbiter Quinn's energy form shifted to a deep red color that Amy was learning to associate with serious concern. "This goes beyond mere rule violation. The creatures are fundamentally altering the nature of the arena itself. Is that necessarily a bad thing?" Amy asked. The question caused an uproar among the assembled delegates. Several began speaking at once in various languages. But the general sentiment seemed to be that yes, it was definitely a bad thing. "The arena has maintained galactic peace for millennia," explained the ethereal representative. "It provides a controlled outlet for species aggression and a fair method for determining hierarchical status. Without it, we'd have to actually talk to each other," Amy finished. "Maybe work together to solve problems instead of fighting over who's strongest." "That's not how the galaxy works," General Voss rumbled. "Maybe it should be," Amy replied. On the displays, the chaos continued to spread. Creatures that had been bred for millennia to be solitary fighters were now working in coordinated groups. Species that had been traditional enemies were sharing resources and combining their unique abilities to overcome challenges that none could have faced alone. The most concerning development, Kane continued, is that the creatures appear to be teaching each other. Knowledge transfer between species is occurring at an unprecedented rate. What kind of knowledge? Asked the insectoid representative. Everything. Combat techniques, problem-solving strategies, environmental adaptation methods. A venomous sisterhood serpent was observed using Drakmarian pack tactics. Several crystalline warriors have learned excavation techniques from the human creatures. Amy watched as Bandit demonstrated his ride the opponent strategy to a group of fascinated aliens. Within minutes, creatures that had never seen each other before were successfully using adapted versions of his technique. They're not just fighting, she realized. They're teaching and learning from each other. They're becoming a community. This is precisely the problem, High Arbiter Quinn stated. The arena is designed to maintain natural species hierarchies. If creatures begin cooperating instead of competing, the whole system breaks down, Amy finished, and you lose your method of controlling interspecies relations. We don't control, protested the legal advisor. We facilitate orderly competition. By making sure everyone stays in their assigned boxes and follows predetermined rules, Amy said. But honey badgers don't believe in boxes. As if to emphasize her point, the displays showed Houdini emerging from what appeared to be the station's primary database core. Whatever he had been doing in there, the results were becoming apparent as information barriers throughout the arena began dissolving. What's he done now? Pete asked. Kane's instruments were beeping frantically. He's accessed the educational databases, combat techniques, survival strategies, technological specifications, and everything the arena has learned about every species over thousands of years. It's all being broadcast simultaneously to every creature in the complex. That information is classified, protested several delegates at once. Not anymore, Amy observed. The revolution was accelerating. Creatures throughout the arena were suddenly gaining access to knowledge that had been carefully restricted to prevent exactly this kind of cooperation. Species that had been kept separate for political reasons were learning about each other's capabilities and cultures. Emergency containment protocols are failing, Kane reported. The creatures have learned to override our security systems. All of them? They're sharing the knowledge as fast as they acquire it. What one species figures out, they're teaching to all the others. General Voss stood up, his massive form intimidating even in the council chamber. This ends now. Deploy the emergency suppression systems. Those systems could harm the creatures, Amy protested. Better than allowing this chaos to spread beyond the arena. High Arbiter Quinn pulsed thoughtfully. Before we take such drastic action, perhaps we should consider the implications of what we're witnessing. What implications? Demanded the legal advisor. These creatures have achieved something we thought impossible. They've created genuine interspecies cooperation without any external coercion or control. They're sharing resources, knowledge, and strategies voluntarily. That's exactly why it's dangerous, General Voss growled. Or, Quinn continued, it's exactly why it's valuable. Amy felt a surge of hope. You're considering letting this continue? I'm considering, Quinn said carefully, whether we're witnessing an evolution in interspecies relations that could benefit the entire galaxy. Or, Kane interrupted nervously, we could be witnessing the complete breakdown of galactic civilization as we know it. Everyone turned to look at the displays, where the honey badgers were still orchestrating their revolution. Tank had apparently convinced the arena's automated maintenance systems to help with his tunnel construction. Fury was leading hunting expeditions that looked more like educational field trips. Chaos had organized what appeared to be the galaxy's first interspecies potluck dinner, and Houdini had just gained access to the arena's communication systems. Attention, all Federation representatives, came a tinny voice through the chamber's speakers. It was Pete Collins, somehow broadcasting from inside the arena complex. How did you get access to our communication grid? Kane demanded. Houdini figured out how to patch me through, Pete's voice replied. I thought you'd like to know that your creatures are having the time of their lives down here. They're learning, cooperating, and solving problems together that none of them could handle alone. This has gone far enough, General Voss declared. Activate the suppression systems immediately. Wait, High Arbiter Quinn commanded. Pete Collins, what is your assessment of the situation? Honestly, this is what the galaxy needs. These creatures aren't destroying anything. They're building something better. Amy looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. Some looked horrified, others fascinated, and a few seemed to be genuinely considering the possibility that Pete might be right. The question, Quinn said finally, is whether we're brave enough to let them continue. The vote was swift and decisive. After 6 hours of emergency debate, the Federation Council passed Resolution 2387A by an overwhelming margin. Humanity was permanently banned from arena participation, and honey badgers were classified as a galactic security risk under the newly created category Omega. Species too disruptive for controlled competition. Dr. Amy Rodriguez watched the final vote tally appear on the chamber's main display, while chaos continued to reign in the arena complex below. Even as the politicians debated, the honey badgers and their growing coalition of converts were still busy dismantling thousands of years of carefully maintained competitive protocols. The decision is final, announced High Arbiter Quinn, his energy form settling into a resigned shade of purple. While we acknowledge that the human representatives achieved remarkable results, their methods are fundamentally incompatible with arena operations. General Voss looked satisfied as he cast his final vote. Some things are too dangerous to be allowed regardless of their effectiveness. Pete Collins emerged from the arena complex looking tired, but oddly pleased. His 5 honey badgers followed behind him, appearing completely unbothered by the galactic crisis they had just caused. Tank was carrying what looked like souvenirs from several different trial environments. Houdini had somehow acquired a small collection of arena control devices. Chaos was wearing what appeared to be a friendship bracelet made from various alien materials. So, Pete said as he joined the human delegation, I take it we're not invited back. Humanity has been granted compensatory membership benefits, Ambassador Roth explained stiffly, in lieu of arena participation rights, enhanced trade privileges, priority status for resource allocation, and preferential diplomatic treatment. Amy raised an eyebrow. They're bribing us to keep the honey badgers away. That's a crude but accurate assessment, Roth admitted. Captain Neil Brooks, who had been watching the proceedings with growing amusement, spoke up. What about the creatures that are still down there? The ones who learned honey badger techniques? Kane, the arena administrator, looked deeply uncomfortable. That's an ongoing situation. Many of the creatures appear to have bonded with each other across species lines. Separation is proving challenging. You mean they don't want to go back to fighting each other? Amy translated. Some have actually refused to return to their home worlds, Kane continued. They're requesting to remain together as a community. Pete grinned. Honey badgers are very social animals. Looks like they taught everyone else to be social too. The meeting was interrupted by an urgent communication from the arena's technical staff. Kane listened to his earpiece with growing alarm. What now? High Arbiter Quinn asked. The creatures have established what they're calling a democracy council. They're requesting to negotiate directly with the Federation for the right to form their own colony. General Voss's stone-like features showed genuine shock. A interspecies colony? That's never been attempted. Probably because no one ever had honey badgers to teach them how to cooperate, Amy observed. 6 months later, Amy found herself back in the Federation Council chamber for a very different kind of meeting. The Harmony Colony, as it had come to be known, had become one of the most successful settlements in Federation space. The combination of different species' abilities had led to breakthrough innovations in everything from agriculture to engineering. Ironically, reported the new arena administrator, the techniques developed by the Harmony Colony have revolutionized our approach to interspecies cooperation. Requests for similar collaborative programs have increased by 3,000%. High Arbiter. Quinn's energy patterns showed what Amy had learned to recognize as satisfaction. It appears the humans and their unusual representatives have catalyzed significant positive changes throughout the Federation. Speaking of humans, interrupted Kane, looking nervous as always, we've received another communication request. Amy felt a familiar sinking feeling. From Earth? Yes, they're asking about participation guidelines for a different species. Something called Canadian geese. The chamber fell completely silent. Amy noticed that several representatives had gone visibly pale, despite being various non-human colors to begin with. General Voss was the first to speak. Canadian geese? According to their preliminary data submission, Kane continued, reading from his tablet, these creatures are described as even more stubborn than honey badgers, with the added advantage of flight capability and what humans call unreasonable aggression levels. Pete, who had remained as an advisor to the Federation's new interspecies cooperation initiative, started laughing. Oh, you don't want to deal with geese. Honey badgers are reasonable compared to Canadian geese. How do you mean? Asked the ethereal representative nervously. Well, Pete explained, honey badgers don't care about rules, but they're not malicious about it. Canadian geese actively enjoy making other creatures miserable. They're basically flying bullies with no natural fear response and an attitude problem. Amy pulled up her tablet and began reading from Earth's submission. According to this, Canadian geese have been known to attack vehicles, chase away creatures 50 times their size, and hold territory against military forces. They're also described as having tactical intelligence and grudge-holding capabilities. Grudge-holding? Quinn asked faintly. They remember specific individuals who have crossed them and will pursue targeted harassment campaigns for years, Amy read. They also coordinate in flocks of hundreds and have been observed using complex strategic formations during conflicts. The chamber buzzed with worried conversations in multiple languages. Furthermore, Amy continued, unlike honey badgers, which are generally motivated by curiosity and stubbornness, Canadian geese appear to be motivated by what the report calls pure spite and territorial superiority complex. Kane was frantically typing on his console. Motion to permanently ban all Earth waterfowl from Federation facilities? Seconded, called out at least 12 representatives simultaneously. All in favor? The vote was unanimous. Pete was still chuckling as the session ended. You know, we haven't even told them about our dolphins yet. Amy noticed that High Arbiter Quinn's energy form flickered nervously at this statement. Perhaps, Quinn said carefully, we should schedule regular cultural exchange sessions where humans can educate us about your planet's species before any future incidents. Good idea, Amy agreed. Though you might want to prepare yourselves. Earth has some very creative evolution. As the delegation prepared to leave, Amy received a message on her personal communicator. It was from the Harmony Colony, where Houdini and his pack had taken up permanent residence as interspecies cooperation consultants. The message was simple. New problem needs honey badger solution. When can you visit? Amy showed the message to Pete, who grinned. Looks like retirement isn't going well for them. Should we be worried about what kind of problem needs a honey badger solution? Probably, Pete said cheerfully. But it'll be interesting to find out. As they boarded their transport ship, Amy reflected on how a simple arena competition had turned into a galactic revolution, all because humanity had decided to think outside the box, or in this case outside the cage. Behind them, the Federation Council was already drafting new regulations specifically designed to prevent future honey badger incidents. Amy suspected they were going to need a lot more regulations before Earth was done. Surprising the galaxy, after all, they still hadn't mentioned the octopi, the ravens, or the fact that human children were essentially tiny honey badgers with opposable thumbs and unlimited curiosity. But that, Amy thought with a smile, was a problem for future diplomatic missions.